If you had been standing on this very spot in 1969, this is what you would have seen. Great fiery fountains of lava reaching up into the sky.
Tonight we discover the incredible power of volcanoes and the influence that they have on our planet.
This is Volcano Live. Look at this incredible landscape. Good morning from Hawaii. We are broadcasting to you live from Big Island, a place that is here simply because of volcanoes, of the volcanoes that created it. Now, yesterday we came to you live from the summit of this volcano. It's called Kilauea, and it is the most active volcano in the world. Have a look at the crater known as Heimaey. You can see a great plume of gas coming off that crater. Beneath that is a lava lake. Now, you can't really appreciate its power or its beauty in daylight, but at night time it's completely different. This is a time lapse taken by our intrepid researcher Tom, and it shows not just the glory of that lake, but look at the Milky Way.
They're gorgeous, you just see that, and you can see the pulses of magma coming out as well. Fantastic. I mean, this landscape is just so barren, almost apocalyptic, but it used to be lush rainforest until May 1969, when the huge eruption came out, and the magma that fed that actually started beneath that lava lake at Kilauea, but it actually, some of the magma came along tunnels underground along the rift zone here, burst out there at Mauna Ulu, producing that crater 400 feet up and covering this area in 17 cubic miles of lava. That is enough to cover Oxford.
Or indeed Cambridge. We, like to be democratic about these things. Now, tonight we are going to be looking at the destructive power of volcanoes, but also the surprising role they have to play in creating new land and new life. Here's what's coming up. Tonight I visit a small Icelandic town which fought back against a volcano and won.
In Chile, a group of volcanologists hike through a landscape turned white and ghostly by an extraordinary ongoing eruption.
Ed Byrne gets his rocks off in the lab.
And here in Hawaii's rainforest, I discover a unique ecosystem that couldn't exist without the volcano.
We are, as Ian said, standing in an area of the Kilauea volcano called Mauna Ulu, and it's not an easy landscape to navigate, but I'm going to do my best to meet Don Swanson. He is a research geologist from the Hawaiian Volcano Observatory here on Big Island. Now, Don, you had the privilege, I think, of being here in 1969 when the eruption went off, but before you tell us about that, can you give us an idea of what this landscape was like before?
I can, Kate. This landscape was rather smooth. It was forested with only a few bare areas from previous eruptions, but it looked vastly different from this rough jumble that it is now. And
then in 1969, what happened? What did you scientists start to notice was going on?
Well, we noticed there were earthquakes beginning, so we rushed down here and we got to this site just after the eruption had started.
Right.
And there were fountains going in the air,
we have some
20 or 30 meters high.
Really dramatic pictures
and
of
then,
that time.
Yeah, and then later on, the fountains even got higher than that as the summer progressed. So the eruption kind of grew like a child grows. And by the end of the year, it was completely mature and had really gone through some exciting times.
I think that's the thing that perhaps we don't appreciate. You sort of think of an eruption being something that happens and then ends quite quickly, but you're saying it went on for months.
this eruption actually lasted for 4 years with a little recess between. But the most exciting time was during the first 9 months when it really had these high fountains.
Now, for a geologist like yourself, to witness something like this must be not just incredibly exciting, but incredibly important as far as your work is concerned.
It is. It's very, it's both exciting and important because we have a chance to see to see repeatedly lava flows being erupted and fountains being erupted and various things that we normally don't get a chance to see. So this was a very stimulating eruption for us.
And I can't quite believe that not only did you have the presence of mind to rush down here to study what was going on, you brought your camera with you. We've got some lovely photographs that Don took. This one gives us a sense of just the scale of those lava fountains.
That lava fountain there is about as tall as the Empire State Building, and we had fountains that were even taller than the Empire State Building.
That's absolutely...
And so they start slowly, they build up, and they play for several hours, and they just go off.
So it is literally like someone's just turned the tap off.
That's exactly right, yeah.
And I love this one, not just because it shows you, the tremendous scale, but it really knits us in time. Very nice 1960s cars there. Was that yours?
Yeah, that was not my car, that was the observatory's car, but a few minutes after I took this photograph, it was the only car left. The other one had left. And then there was a high fountain continuing, and the wind blew the fountain material, landed on the car, and the car needed a new paint job.
I bet it did.
Yeah.
But I think the most spectacular sight from that time was, if I can call it a waterfall or a lava fall, I suppose, is a better description. But that is just a magnificent sight.
I think that's probably the most spectacular sight I've ever seen, too, in my life. That lava falls going into a crater is bigger than American Falls on Niagara. Would you believe it or not? And the lava fell into the crater for several hours before the crater was almost filled.
That's absolutely beautiful, beautiful sight. Now, I'm going to take advantage of you, if I may, Don, because we've been having questions sent in by viewers. One was sent in to us via Twitter by Mimi Surson. She wanted to know how close you get to lava before your face melts. And on the same sort of theme, Max, who is 11 and in bed recovering from an operation, so I hope you're feeling okay, Max. He wants to know what would happen to your hand if you touched molten lava.
Well, Mimi and Max, you can get pretty close to lava if there's only a little bit. You can just use your arm or your jacket as a shield. You can touch the lava if you're wearing gloves, but not for very long. But if with the big fountains, there's just so much heat coming off that you have to stand back quite a long ways, or you would get burned.
It does. I mean, we went out to the lava fields just out there, which you will see in the program tomorrow, and the heat coming off them is extraordinary. I did feel like my face might melt if I got any closer.
Yeah, well, when it starts getting that hot, you want to get out.
Yeah. Don, thank you very, very much for your time. We'll be joining Don a little bit later on in the program. But Ian and I have been in Hawaii for about a week preparing for the series. And one of the first things that we really wanted to do was go out and explore these extraordinary surroundings. So we set off down the evocatively named Chain of Craters Road. On all sides it was lush green rainforest, but then the vegetation started thinning out. It was like being on a completely different planet.
It's like an ocean of lava, isn't that?
That is extraordinary. It looks almost, you know what it looks like? You're going to make me sound like I'm kind of from the Great British Bake Off. It looks like a very well-cooked brownie. You know how it kind of just is smooth on the surface, but it cracks
you feel as if
through.
it's little chocolate runnels and all of this.
But that is as far as the eye can see.
Now I've seen lava flows on Mount Etna and other volcanoes, but nothing on this scale. And then there was a final surprise for us.
Wow, does it go right across the road?
The road.
That's amazing.
I just thought the road was going to bend round. It's just completely stopped the road. This is great.
Should we get out?
Yeah, let's see that. That's great, isn't it? That's the end of the road. Absolutely.
Quite literally.
Now, one of the things that we're doing this week in our volcanic control hub is keeping a track on the eruptive activity around the world. The Smithsonian are sending us daily updates, really, on what's been happening. We've got a map showing those volcanoes that have got an alert going on in the last 24 hours. So this is the active volcanoes, typically 20 to 30 a day, and we can see the spread around the whole planet, really, which is the point.
Now, yesterday we told you about a volcano in Guatemala, which is here, called Fuego, that was erupting. But we've had the latest news from the Smithsonian is that this volcano, Santa Maria, has also been showing signs of erupting and apparently triggering avalanches. I think we've got some footage from... Oh, no, it's one of these special satellite images.
Yeah, this is a MODIS image. This is really cool. What is it? A satellite that travels around the planet, and what it does is it images at night time. So
Right.
it picks out hotspots, which could be fires, but it's often volcanoes. So here's Santa Maria here, and here's a volcano, and you can see these are thermal hotspots. So that's places where magma is getting close enough to the surface to actually be seen from space. And I suspect what's happening is that as the magma comes up, the volcano is getting unstable, and it's shedding avalanches.
Okay, now there is a small town near that volcano. It's called Quetzaltenango. I've actually been there. It's a rather beautiful little town. Quite a small population, luckily, just 200,000 people. Do we know what sort of alert has been put on that volcano?
I don't think there's any evacuation at the moment. I mean,
Right.
these things happen all the time. Some things they go to nothing.
Okay. There is another one that has been causing great concern in Japan.
Sakurajima.
Yeah, now you know this volcano quite well, don't
I went
you?
there a few years ago, and it's a volcano on an island, and there's some communities immediately below it. But the point is, across the bay, very short distance, big town Kagoshima. If we can go to the webcams, it was getting. Now the other day it had plumes that was going up 8,000 feet. This is just from yesterday, and it looks there's the plume. So it's still active, but it doesn't seem to have accelerated and intensified. So that's good news.
So we think that I mean, with an eruption like that, can it go in sort of ebbs and flows?
Yeah.
Can you get these huge plumes and then it calms down, but it could rise up again?
Well, we're going to see this repeated over the next few days. They're really unpredictable beasts, really, volcanoes. And yeah, no, it could go to nothing, or it could kickstart a really big eruption. So we'll need to keep our eye on those.
Well, we will, and you can too. All the active volcanoes on our map, well, many of them do have webcams, and you can access those webcams by going to our website, bbc.co.uk/volcano live. You can also send your questions in. Lots are coming in, and we'll be answering a few more of those a bit later in the show. But now we've seen how lava can transform a landscape, but so can volcanic ash. In June last year, a volcano called Puyehue in Chile started erupting. Earlier this year, with that eruption still ongoing, Hugh Tuffen, who's at Lancaster University, joined an expedition of volcanologists to go and see the eruption for himself, and he took one of our cameras with him.
I wanted to be a volcanologist because I love mountains, and I love the idea that mountains can be alive. They're not just these static things that are in the background, they're actually almost living things that can be changing the scenery in front of us. My specialism is rhyolitic magma. Rhyolite is very, very thick, viscous magma that is rich in silicate. We almost never watch rhyolitic eruptions taking place. They're very rare. There's actually only been 2 worldwide in my whole lifetime. In June last year, a rhyolite volcano in Chile called Puyehue erupted for the first time in 50 years. At the start of the eruption, the plume reached 14 kilometers in altitude, and this disrupted flights in the southern hemisphere for some time. By the following January, it had really calmed down quite a lot. I just had to get out there. It was an epic journey to get there, as the volcano is in a pretty remote location, 500 miles south of the capital Santiago. The rainforest at Puyehue is normally green and lush. There are fuchsias and hummingbirds. It's a beautiful place. but we found it a desolate, quiet, stifled place that was just covered in ash. The walk up was pretty tough. It was 4 or 5 hours of continuous uphill, carrying about 25 kilograms. Joining me on the expedition were John Castro and Ian Skipper. John is an expert in rhyolite.
Just out of shape.
Tell me about it.
And Ian is an expert on vent processes.
We're probably about 2/3 of the way up our trail, and we're starting to hear persistent rumbling from the vent.
The booming sounds got louder and louder, but we still couldn't see anything through the trees. But there was one point when there was a clearing, and suddenly we could see this billowing ash rising up from the vent.
There it is.
My hairs just stood on end. I was like, it's fantastic. We had to find somewhere to camp. We needed a source of water, and we needed to be far enough from the vent that we were out of range of any of the large blocks of lava that were being blasted out. Being so close to the vent felt exhilarating. It's just incredibly exciting to see the vent of one of the volcanoes that we've been studying for so many years live right in front of us.
Whoa!
The textbook.
One of the unsolved mysteries of rhyolites is how the gas escapes from this very, very thick magma. There has to be some way of the gas getting out.
Whoa, there's a sideways beastie.
It seemed as though they were valves through which gas and ash was able to escape very rapidly, but then these were blocking up, and then a new valve was opening up right next to it.
Whoa, look, it's just cleared itself again there.
So this really helped us to think about the way that gas is able to escape from this very thick rhyolitic magma. It gradually got darker and darker, and as it did so, then the vent really came to life. I then realised that I had a switch on the camera, which meant that we could go from watching visible light to infrared light. We could suddenly see bombs of lava that were being ejected on these long, lazy paths before they landed on the ground. It was a beautiful thing to watch, but also very scientifically useful, as we can then work out how fast the bombs are moving, and this all links in to how the gas is able to escape from the magma at the vent. It's very exciting for us indeed, because we're rhyolite aficionados. We love rhyolite. We've been studying it for years. And to actually see all these secrets being revealed by Puyehue was quite something.
Great stuff from Hugh. We'll be joining him again for the other part of his expedition a little later in the programme. I tell you what struck me about that eruption was that it was turning a landscape white.
Yeah,
and yet, you know, you think of volcanic eruptions turning landscapes black. So why was that ash white?
Well, the volcano that Hugh is at is a really interesting chemistry to that magma. It's got a lot of silica in it. Silica is a light-coloured mineral, if you think quartz, for example.
Yeah.
So that's why the magma, when it explodes, turns into this kind of white ash. When you look at these rocks have got hardly any silica in them, so that's why they're much darker, greys and blacks. But although there's no change in chemistry, there is a change in texture. I mean, if you look at this, the ones we've got just in front of us, it's beautiful. This is Puyehue. So what happens, it's a smooth, polished...
So Puyehue is the name of this
the
formation?
Hawaiian name, yeah. And really what it is it's really hot magma that comes out very fluidy, very runny, and flows, and then it kind of freezes, it cools quite quickly, so it's got this glaze on top of it. And often the other magma, you can see, it's going to run underneath, it flows underneath, but on surface you get a feeling of the motion, the flow that goes on.
So this would have been seeping up out of the ground, as we saw in some of the footage yesterday.
That's those red rivers of, rivers of lava.
And so it would run quite quickly. It would almost be like a sort of a treacle or something creeping across the landscape.
But look at this stuff up just next door to it. Same chemistry, similarly erupted from Mauna Ulu, just over there. And look at it. I mean, this is rubbly here. This stuff is from a much more slow-moving lava, stickier, and so when it cools, it starts to cool and slow down.
So why
and
does
breaks
it
up.
get sticky? Why, if it's coming from the same volcano and the chemistry is the same, why is it sticky?
When it's lower temperature, it gets stickier and it's just harder to move. Think of oil in a pot. But the point is, this is horrible to walk on. You'll lacerate yourself. And the Hawaiians call this ah-ah, which they tell me is because when you walk on it, it's ah-ah. I can't believe that's true. If anyone at home actually knows what the Hawaiian word ah means, send in, please.
Now, as we've seen, volcanoes can wreak devastation not just on landscapes, but unfortunately on human populations as well. Since records began, it's believed that about 250,000 people have lost their lives as a result of volcanoes. Now, in disaster movies, it's often this stuff, the lava, that is seen as the culprit. But how accurate is that? Well, Ed Byrne discovers.
The classic 1997 disaster movie, Volcano.
Got Tommy Lee Jones in it.
A volcano's gone off in downtown LA and torrents of fast-flowing lava are incinerating all in their path. But how much of this is science fact and how much Hollywood fiction? Dr. Alison Rust from the University of Bristol is one of the country's leading volcanologists. She wants to explode some lava myths.
So Alison, this was once lava, and presumably if you heat it up hot enough, can be lava again.
You should probably have to heat it to 1100 degrees or so.
I see an oxyacetylene torch right here. Can we do that? Can we do this?
Can
Can we do it? Can we do it? Can we do it? Can we do it? Don't try this at home, kids. Oh wow.
Yeah, it's pretty quick, and you can see it's bubbling. Those gas bubbles are growing, and
Yeah. It melted really quickly, but it flows very, very slowly, doesn't it?
yeah.
You'd have to be pretty stubborn or pretty slow-moving to get, to get killed by a lava flow, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, you can generally outrun the lava flow.
That's quite cool. I just made lava.
You did.
That's pretty sweet.
So what about these things? Lava bombs. How dangerous are they in the real world?
So lava bombs form in explosive eruptions. Lava flows are when the viscous fluid comes out and pours out the top of a volcano. In explosive eruptions, you're fragmenting or breaking up the magma. And bombs are relatively big pieces of magma. The bombs, when they come out of the vent, often they go on a trajectory like a cannonball.
This one actually is very like a cannonball and surprisingly light for a
Yeah,
rock.
it's because there's a lot of bubbles in there. So it's really gases that are driving the explosive eruptions.
This is what they look like in real life.
But how far from a volcano do they generally fly?
It depends on how explosive the eruption is, how far they'll go. But generally, no more than a kilometer, something like that.
Right. What is the major sort of killer then from a volcano?
The main killers during eruptions and shortly afterwards are pyroclastic flows.
Okay.
They go much faster than you can run, and they go much further away from the volcano than a bomb would go.
When an explosive volcano erupts, it throws enormous columns of hot ash particles and volcanic gases into the atmosphere. Gravity can cause that ash column to collapse, and when it does, it can turn into what's known as a pyroclastic flow. These flows can travel dozens of miles, moving at hundreds of miles an hour at temperatures of up to 1,000 degrees Celsius. They destroy everything in their path, and since 1600, more than 40,000 people have been killed by pyroclastic flows, more than any other immediate volcanic hazard.
So Alison, explain to me how this tank can be used to recreate a pyroclastic flow.
All right, well, as you can probably tell, there's water in here.
Yeah.
And we're going to pretend this water is actually the atmosphere. This is going to be gas, and we're going to make our pyroclastic flow in here. This is going to be our volcanic ash and pumice, and we're going to be simulating an ash column above a volcano that becomes unstable and collapses.
And then when I open this gate, that's essentially mimicking the top of the volcano collapsing.
Exactly. So here it goes. Typically in a volcano, things going downhill, it might hit a flat area, But because it's gravity driving it, it wants to go down, so it tends to stay in valleys and it goes downhill.
These flows can travel over land, over hills, and even over water. When Mount Krakatoa in Indonesia erupted in 1883, pyroclastic flows killed dozens of people over 25 miles away across the sea. So how could this have happened? Well, not even the scientists are sure, but Alison has a theory.
So we've got some ash here heated to 600 degrees Celsius. Okay, and then we're going to pour it into the water. You can see steam cloud coming up, and I think you can see some of the ash bounces off. And that's because we're having a little steam explosion.
This all becomes clear when filmed with a high-speed camera. As the super hot ash hits the water, the steam created throws the ash back up into the air. Could this be what happened at Krakatoa?
The steam explosions are adding energy and pressure. It's like a bit of a cushion, reduces the friction at the base, and also is just keeping that ash in the pyroclastic flow instead of sinking.
Right. And that's why it just goes so much further over water then.
Yeah, that's part of the reason. There's another idea of something that might help, and that is that pumice has a lot of bubbles in it and it floats. And so you often get these sort of rafts of pumice on the sea, and it might be that the pyroclastic flows are also making use of that raft to help them travel long distances.
Skimming on the sort of raft of pumice as well.
Yeah.
Right.
What that film, I think, really brings home is it's not really lava flows, it's the big killer volcanoes, it's these things, pyroclastic flows. And later this week, I'm going to really investigate those a little bit more carefully when I go to Vesuvius in Italy.
Now, we've looked at pyroclastic flows briefly, we've looked at lava, we've looked at ash, but something that you may not think is a volcanic destructive force is mud. But believe me, it can be. If you have an ash eruption followed by heavy rainfall, all the ash mixes with melted ice, you get mud. And that can often change into mud flows known as lahars. Now, that is what happened in 1985 in Colombia. It's a volcano called Nevada del Ruiz. It erupted, and these scenes of devastation are absolutely shocking still to this day. It caused the death of 23,000 people. It was the deadliest volcanic eruption in South American history. Why was it, Ian? Why did it, I suppose, cause such a great loss of life?
Well, I think there was just no monitoring of the volcano. This mud flow started way up the valley near the volcano. People could have had maybe 20 or 30 minutes warning if there had just been a little instrument telling them there was a flow on the way. People could have found, high ground or something. So it was a tragedy. But one of the ironies of these disasters is they often kickstart changes in technology, changes in practice that make us forecasting and studying volcanoes much, much better. I mean, it's a sad testament, but it's true. What's interesting is just this week, though, Nevada del Ruiz has restarted again, and I think it's telling. If we can go to see where, so Nevada del Ruiz, Colombia, it's just over here, and if we have a look at the footage, and it's just come back over the last week from the webcams there, you can see some plume activity, some ash cloud coming out of the summit crater, and here it is in the background here. Here's Amero, the modern town. Now the thing is, what's really interesting there, there's a summit much more active. So that's one that we will be keeping an eye open on.
I mean, do we think that, are they starting an evacuation? Do we know? Is there a sort of a class of warnings as far as volcanoes are concerned?
So they've raised the warning to a level 2, which means an eruption is likely within weeks, days or weeks. Right. And evacuation started. Okay. And so, even if it's as bad an eruption as it was in 1985, the death toll won't be anywhere near. And so I think that's a testament to how far we've come in 30 years.
That's very true. Well, you can keep an eye on the webcams of that volcano and indeed all the active volcanoes by going to our website, bbc.co.uk/volcano live. It seems, doesn't it, that volcanoes really are our ultimate adversities, that there's absolutely nothing we can do to stop them erupting. But there is an amazing story which I discovered when I was in Iceland of a community that fought against a volcano to stop what seemed to be an inevitable fate. "5 miles off the southern coast of Iceland, lies a small volcanic island. This is Heimaey, and the approach to its harbour is protected by looming cliffs of black rock, a clue to events which rocked this place to its foundations almost 40 years ago.
At 2 a.m. on the morning of January the 23rd, 1973, a fissure a mile long opened up and split this part of the island in two.
Today on Heimaey, evidence of that volcanic eruption is easy to find.
This was the stuff that was coming out of that fissure. It is actually a sort of ash, but it's more like gravel, and it was literally raining down. But of course, it wasn't cool, inert stuff like this. It was at about 1,000 degrees Celsius. So to be here when that happened must have felt like being in a living hell.
To the 5,000 inhabitants of this tiny island, it felt like the end. The volcano threatened to engulf everything, and although it was a heart-wrenching decision, they knew immediately that they had to leave.
It was pure luck that the night the volcano erupted, the harbour was full of fishing boats, and on a normal night all the men and all the boats would have been out at sea, but there'd been a huge storm the night before that had kept men and boats at home. So when the volcano erupted, suddenly there was a means of escape from what must have seemed at the time an inescapable fate.
During the first night of the eruption, almost the entire population was evacuated by boat to the mainland. 100 or so people, mostly young men, stayed behind to try and save as many homes as they could. At first, they concentrated on clearing ash, hoping to stop roofs collapsing. But the ash kept falling, and many houses were soon completely buried. Where a whole neighbourhood once thrived, just this single chimney now emerges from the ash. Worse was to come as a huge lava flow advanced towards the town, consuming everything in its path. And when the lava finally reached the coast, it began to threaten the most valuable part of the island. The harbour entrance in Heimaey was just a few hundred metres wide. But as lava added new land to the coast, there was a real chance that the gap might be closed forever. For those who had stayed behind, like local welder Halle Tryggvason, that was the moment the real fight back began.
We knew we had to save the harbour because our livelihood depends on being able to sail out to sea. If we're going to live on this island, we have to be able to fish. Our town and way of life wouldn't last long without the fishing industry. That's just the way it is.
It seemed unthinkable that anything could be done, but one volcanologist had an idea. Several years earlier, on a nearby island, he'd seen how a lava flow near the coast had changed direction when it came into contact with seawater. And he wondered if the same thing could be achieved deliberately this time in Heimaey.
I was put to work welding pipes together. As soon as we began spraying cold seawater on the lava, it started hardening and gradually heaping up. We noticed that the lava was losing ground and actually being diverted. So everyone was saying, "It's working. Spray more on it, spray more."
Heimaey and the rest of the team worked around the clock. A huge network of pipes was put together and extra pumps were shipped in to get water right into the heart of the lava flow.
An unbelievable amount of seawater was sprayed onto the lava to try and stop its advance. Huge amounts, constantly. I have no idea how much, but it would be fun to know.
Incredibly, cooled by the water, a huge barrier of solidified lava was built up alongside the harbour. This new wall of rock stopped the lava flow 200 metres short of the cliffs on the far side. Today, that gap remains and access to the harbour has been preserved. By standing up to the volcano, the people of Heimaey had maintained their livelihood, and to this day, they continue to harvest the rich fishing grounds of the Northern Atlantic.
It must have been a really fantastic feeling that somehow, against all odds, you were doing it.
A volcano isn't exactly an ordinary kind of adversary, not at all. So it was amazing to see our plan actually working. It's incredible that we were able to stop the lava and save our town as well as our harbour. It was miraculous. It just worked.
In 1973, the people of Heimaey had the audacity to stand up to the worst nature could throw at them. It was an amazing display of resilience. For Iceland, it was a rare victory for the people in their long battle against the volcanoes in their midst.
As Iceland's Prime Minister told me, it was 5,000 years since the last volcano here. Perhaps it will be another 5,000 years to the next. As he put it, the people of all of Iceland live with fire beneath their feet.
Just an incredible story, that. And then perhaps just as incredible is the fact that 20% of the world's population live within 100 kilometres of a volcano. I mean, have a look at Big Island here. Now, we are just down what's called Chain of Craters Road. We're about there. That's the crater where we were last night, the Heimaey crater. And this is the volcano that everyone has turned their attention to. This is Mauna Ulu. It's actually the biggest volcano in the world, and it has lava flows that in the last eruption in 1984 flowed down the side here towards the main town on Big Island, Hilo. Now, when this one blows, it really throws out an enormous amount of lava. We've got some footage of it, and it pours down the mountainside, as you can see. In that last eruption, the lava flow stopped within 4 miles of Hilo. A fairly terrifying fact. Of course, it could happen. It is already happening down here. There are lava flows that have taken over a little town called Kilauea, which is where Ian and I will be tomorrow. So this is definitely the one that the local population here have got their eyes on. Ian is out on the lava, I believe, and we'll be interviewing the lovely Don Swanson again.
Well, Heimaey in Iceland, it was water that was a saviour, but Don Swanson, the HVO, here in Kilauea, water's got this different role, isn't it? Apart from raining on us.
Yeah, water can have a different role, yeah, and that can be very different from at Heimaey. Water can cause explosive eruptions by heating up and forming steam, and then the steam powers the explosions.
Ton of explosions. This was where it was all started in '69. This is the fissure that erupted out, isn't it?
That's right, yeah, this is the fissure. This one wasn't steam powered, but this was the very first fissure and the first fountains in 1969 from Mauna Ulu. The fountains here weren't very large, but during the course of the summer they became very high, as we found out.
Extraordinary.
Yeah.
So why is it then that volcanoes switch from this gentle, effusive type to explosive?
Well, it seems as if the summit region of the volcano has to collapse so that water can get in to the plumbing system, and once water gets into the plumbing system, then you can generate steam explosions. So Kilauea really has a kind of Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde personality. You know, it can bipolar, if you want to call it that.
Right, yeah.
It can switch from lava flows, like as we're having now, to explosive eruptions quickly, and then these periods can last for centuries.
So how explosive do you think it can get? I mean,
well, we've had well, the volume isn't very much, but we've had 6 eruptions in the last 1,200 years send ash well up into the jet stream, which would be 10, 15 kilometers high here at Kilauea.
And in the tropics, that really allows it to
in the
power
tropics,
the planet.
that's a problem, and of course it's a problem for aircraft traffic as well. So Kilauea never used to be thought to be dangerous like that, but it really can be.
But I have to say, this landscape is just amazing. These are trees. That's what got me. These are trees.
These are trees. The lava flowed around the tree. The lava was cooled by the tree. Then the level of the lava dropped, and this became an island.
Brilliant.
Surrounded by lava.
It just shows you this kind of personality that volcanoes have. And Hugh Tuffen in Chile is exploring that in another way.
The first day was all about watching the vent and the plume.
Whoa, that was a textbook.
The second day we wanted to get in and watch the lava flow itself. This was an obsidian lava flow. And obsidian is volcanic glass that rhyolite tends to form when it forms lava flows. This is solidified magma which hasn't formed any crystals. It was quite a slog to get there. We had to go up a ridge, down a ridge, up a ridge, down a ridge, and eventually we came over a slope, and in front of us we saw this spectacular, huge, ash-covered lava flow. It was the first time in our lives that we'd ever seen an obsidian flow, a rhyolitic lava flow, in action. This was an amazing thing.
I bet that lava flow is super hot.
That's the lava flow there, the dark grey rubbly material flowing out from the base of the volcano. This was as far from a river of red lava as you could get. This was like a glacier of creaking and groaning lava that was almost imperceptibly moving.
They're all red inside, no exposed. What is unique is that we're seeing the explosive phase and effusive phase, which is still active due to the evidence we're hearing by rocks falling off the flow front.
Rhyolitic eruptions have always been couched in terms of explosive or effusive, so either it's violently producing pumice or it's gently producing lava. But what we found was that you have both happening at the same time. So what we're watching at Puyehue is really new evidence that's telling us some of the details about how these volcanoes work. John went down to the edge of the lava flow to collect a sample. So this is just John collecting some obsidian samples, and I'm hoping to see him running away from there as pretty fast.
Definitely some hard-won samples.
That sample is a really nice resource for us that we can now use to study in more detail how the lava deforms and how it was losing its gas. We didn't have very much water, we were running out of food, and the ash was falling right over us. So we decided to go back down to the valley. As we walked back down through the forest, it was so eerily quiet again. And eventually when we got down to the valley itself, everything seemed brilliantly colourful after the black and white and grey landscape we just come from. We went down to Lago Ranco, which is a beautiful lake just at the foot of the volcano. Many of the lakes that are around Puyehue have floating rafts of pumice. Pumice is such a light rock as it's full of bubbles. So you have these huge slicks of pumice that are floating on the surface, and they're moving with the waves. It's a beautiful thing to witness.
when you've come down from the summit, no better way to get cleaned up than to go for a little swim in the exfoliating pumice raft.
It was one of the most exciting trips I've ever been on. It was a practical challenge, it was tiring, it was really exciting as well. We felt a little bit on the edge sometimes, just through being so close to the vent. But for me, to be able to watch in action these processes that I've been studying for years, that was really a special thing that I'll treasure.
See why Hugh thinks this. You can see why Hugh thinks this, because here it is. Look, that's obsidian.
Oh, it is beautiful. So this is volcanic glass.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's absolutely stunning.
But have a look at this.
You can't throw rocks at me. Oh my goodness, it's pumice, isn't it?
Comes out the same volcano. That is the pumice. You can see all the gas bubbles in there.
So two things from the same volcano, totally different formations.
Yeah, and that's the more dangerous. Got a lot of silica in there. That blasts out, and like, it's silica glass you take it into your lungs. Nasty
stuff. Good for your feet, though. Now, time for our viewers' questions. We've got some crackers for you. Actually, one of the topics that has come up time and time again is Yellowstone. When is it going to blow, Professor Iain Stewart?
Big question. There's a supervolcano in America, and actually, we're going to be dealing with that on Thursday. So let's hold off today. Supervolcano's Thursday.
Okay, so tune in then. The other thing, our favourite volcanic fact of yesterday's programme was to tell you that Mauna Ulu here was not only the biggest volcano in the world, it is the second biggest in the solar system. But of course, everyone wants to know, what is the biggest?
It is Olympus Mons on Mars.
There you are. And now not many houses there, no, that's true. Mrs. Judd and her Year 9 geographers at the well-named Plume School, can you believe that, in Malden and Essex, they want to know, will there be a volcanic eruption in England?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. No. Pretty
short answer.
There was last activity in Britain about 50 million years ago, but we've shifted our position now. The source of that magma is now underneath Iceland, so there's no way stuff's coming up. Pretty sure about that one.
He's pretty sure.
Famous last words back
John Hunter, this is a nice one. John Hunter in Workington in Cumbria. He wants to know, does lava contain precious metals?
It does, yeah. So the hot fluids that come up with the magma have got lots of precious metals. That often gets blown out in these plumes. There's a lot of metals coming out of those things. On Mount Etna, this is my favourite fact, every year 700 grams of gold gets ejected in its plume.
700 grams?
You'll be out there with your little bag.
It's not actually that much. I mean, given how much stuff comes out, it's not really worth going out with your panning basket, is it? Let's do, Paul Hill in Ealing. He wants to know, how far down is the deepest magma chamber?
Oh, that's quite hard to tell, because often volcanoes have different magma chambers. There's a lower pooling place, and then they climb up to shallow. But tens of miles down is is.
But did you not say that we've got it's about a mile under the Heimaey?
There's a shallow one about a mile under, and then there's a deeper one about 20 to 30 miles. That's typically.
There you go, Paul. Well, keep your questions coming. bbc.co.uk/volcano live. Now, it may surprise you that volcanoes can be creative as well as destructive. They build new land, and with that comes new life. And the Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, which is where we are, is a World Heritage Site, not for its volcanoes, but for its extraordinary biodiversity. Now, a lot of you have been in touch saying, we want to see Hawaii's flora and fauna. Well, you are in luck, and so indeed were we, because last week, an ecologist called Rhonda Lowe, who works here at the park, phoned and said, the most incredible thing is happening. There's this plant that flowers once in its 25-year lifespan, and then it dies. And there's one, in fact more than one, in bloom right this minute. Well, we just had to go and see it. So beautiful up here, isn't it?
It is beautiful. You're on the volcano Mauna Ulu at about 6,600 foot elevation.
Right.
And where I'm taking you is a really special place, and I think you'll enjoy it.
I'm sure I will. Wow, look.
These are the Mauna Ulu silver swords, or people also call it ka'u, silver swords.
I don't think I've ever seen anything like it.
You're in luck. You don't always see them flowering. In fact, if you had come last year, there would have been no flowering plants.
That is the most beautiful thing.
I agree.
And the scent.
Yes.
There's a very heavy smell of honey coming off it.
And they live to be maybe 20 to 30 years.
How rare is it?
It's very rare. We only know of 3 natural populations remaining in the world, all on this mountain, and the largest population is only 700 individuals.
Wow. So this amazing plant is totally endemic to this volcano?
Yes. It's unique to Mauna Ulu. There's other silver swords found on other mountains on the different islands.
Yeah.
This is specific to Mauna Ulu.
That's extraordinary. It was so unusual that we, as a film crew, were actually in the right spot at the right time. How many times have you said, oh, you should have been here last week or last... We were here absolutely spot on, and what a great surprise and treat it was seeing that.
It's lovely, that sentiment that volcanoes like Kilauea are places where life, if it's given a chance, can just flourish into such exotic things. It's a really important one, and one it's really easy to forget amongst all these images of spewing lava and fire fountains. But the other day, I went out to see the good side of volcanoes.
Walking through Hawaii's black lava fields, it's hard to imagine that volcanoes are capable of anything other than total destruction.
Around 150 years ago, this beautiful bay here used to stretch all the way around here. Those trees over there, they were on the shoreline, and beside them was a thriving little fishing village. And then in 1859, this happened. A huge lava flow flowed from Mauna Ulu, Hawaii's biggest volcano. It tore through the trees, it destroyed the fishing village, spilled out into the sea and filled in half the bay.
But although the eruption was devastating, the lava created new land. It added almost 2 square miles to this shoreline, providing a new habitat for life. And it's not just here. All over the island, volcanoes are building land. In fact, volcanoes built the whole island and every other island in the entire Hawaiian chain. Once there was nothing here but open ocean. Now there's a whole string of island paradises, all of them built by volcanoes. Blanketed in forest and bathed in sunlight, the Hawaiian Islands have become a haven for life, teeming with unique species.
So tell us about this forest. I mean, it looks really rich.
It is. The amazing thing about this forest is virtually everything we're seeing is found nowhere else in the world, only in Hawaii. And this is actually a very healthy forest. So in terms of plants, there's over 2,000 endemic species of plants found only here.
I can hear some birds.
The chattering, tweeting bird we're mostly hearing is the apapane. It's a nectar-feeding native bird, bright red. It has a little curved bill to fit into our curved flowers to get nectar. So there's an incredible pairing of the plants and the birds here.
So how important is the volcanism for this habitat here?
It's fundamentally important. This entire environment is founded by the volcano. The volcanoes create these islands in the middle of the ocean, 2,000 plus miles away from any other landmass. And that is the arena for all of this evolution and adaptation to happen.
Even the rain, really, in a way, because obviously the rain just kind of falls on this little speck of land.
Yeah, without that, we wouldn't have these amazing rainforests, that's for sure.
But even in this luscious rainforest, you're never far from evidence of the devastation Hawaii's volcanoes can bring.
Hey, sun's out.
Yeah,
at last.
Comes and goes.
Yeah. Wow, that's it. So the forest is done and here we're into the lava.
These lava flows come from an eruption in 1974, a fissure eruption, cracks ripped open through the earth.
It's incredible that change, that abrupt line between lush forest and then suddenly wham, black lava.
Mm-hmm. It may look desolate, but among the ashes, life has found a way to thrive again.
So this is our native ohia tree, found nowhere else in the world. They're adapted to grow right out of this raw lava.
So how are they doing it? What's it rooting into then? It's not rooting into solid rock, is it?
There's no soil, and in many cases they don't even need to be in a crack as you would expect. They can be just stuck to the side of the rock with their roots sprawling over top of it.
Because many people have this kind of simplified view that volcanoes are very fertile environments because they're rich in nutrients, but it's quite hard for plants to get at those nutrients, isn't it?
Lava has all the minerals a plant could ever want, but they're locked into the lava. As near as we can figure, this tree is surviving completely off of what little nutrients there is in rainwater.
It's kind of an incredible symbol of resilience, isn't it?
Absolutely, but eventually as the volcanoes age and become inactive, the raw materials we're seeing here will begin to erode and be weathered away, and it'll contribute to the rich volcanic soils we always hear about.
In a few decades, ohia trees will have transformed this land back into lush forest. In a few thousand years, the mineral-rich lava will have been broken down into a fertile volcanic soil that will support countless more plant species. But volcanoes do a lot more than provide nutrients for plants to grow, because without volcanoes, there wouldn't be any plants at all. Here at the summit of Kilauea, there's barely a plant to be seen. But it's not what's on the ground that's important, it's what's in the air.
That huge cloud billowing out from the caldera is mostly water vapour, steam, but also sulphur dioxide and most crucially, carbon dioxide, CO2. It's carbon dioxide that's crucial for plants because it allows them to photosynthesize, the process by which they capture and store energy from the sun.
When our planet first formed 4.5 billion years ago, it was volcanic activity that put CO2 into the atmosphere. So without volcanoes, plants would never have evolved in the first place.
Of course, we tend to think of carbon dioxide as a greenhouse gas, acting as a blanket to keep the planet warm. Too much carbon dioxide and that can make the planet dangerously warm, but too little is also dangerous too. If there was no carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, then heat would just leak out into space. And if there was no greenhouse gases at all in the atmosphere, then this cosy, life-giving planet of ours would just be a frozen wasteland. So it's not just plants that rely on volcanoes, it's all of life on Earth.